Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's that time of the month with an update probably around the corner or at least sometime soon on the way that I go ahead and make my personal wish list for this month and beyond, taking things that I've seen in the last month that really have affected GT7 and basically push for improvements. I'll also be taking your suggestions, so leave them down in the comment. With that being said, let's get straight into it with point number one, which is very obvious. It's going to be a track. This is very much the most obvious point to make of any update video. It's been a fair while. In fact, when we think back to the last real world track we had, that was in November of 2022 with Road Atlanta. In terms of a on-road track, that was in February of 2023 with Grand Valley Highway 1. Since then, we've had one extra track release, which was in November of 2023, which was of course Lake Louise, which was a snow dirt track, off-road, whatever you want to call it, which of course has very limited use in a game like Gran Turismo, considering the rally takes a back seat to the main on-track action. This time last year there were rumours of Montreal coming to GT7. Now it's not really known if that did end up becoming Lake Louise and was just sort of a placeholder name. That is a possibility, however it is also possible it's still in the works. And with Montreal and the Gran Turismo World Series being hosted there on July the 6th, it will be almost the perfect time. Next up for me, and this is something that has plagued the 2024 updates in my opinion, and whilst they have definitely been more consistent than what we saw in 22 and 23, one thing that has massively dropped in terms of the quality is the events themselves. Whilst the bar was set pretty low the majority of the time, apart from maybe a handful of updates which actually features some very much worthwhile events, and in terms of 2024 I can probably name only two events that have actually been decent so far, that being the Le Mans event and the St. Croix event, which came with update 1.48 last time around. Apart from that, the majority of these events have been very poor. They've been typically 3 to 5 lap sprint events, very much targeted at the specific cars that are coming with the update, and that's pretty much it. The majority of the events that have come in 2024 with each single update range from being fully completed in 15 minutes to at most around about 30. Next up is going to be more events, again bringing back to the same point that 2024 has seemingly been very weak on the event side. The events themselves have been very shallow and also very lacking in numbers, typically ranging from 3 to 4 events at most, and that's pretty much a lot, with the majority of them, apart from maybe one event per every other update, being very short. Again, they're going to be done in about 15 to 20 minutes maximum. That is just really not enough if you're wanting to add all these cars and then keep your player base around for the month using those cars. Why would people go back to these older events where typically the AI is just set out in a very strange way? We're always chasing down the rabbit from the start of the starting grid that starts half a lap to nearly a full lap ahead of us. Again, there's no real reason to go back to those old events, as the majority of them are just completely forgotten once we've done them, and then it's a shame that the new events come along and do the exact same thing. For point number 4, this has to be dynamic tracks. Next up for me for point number 4 has to be dynamic tracks. This is something that's always bugged me. I get the weather system in GT7 is probably more complex than a lot of other racing games. Again, the fact that half of the Nordschleife can be covered in rain and half dry really does show that there is more, and a more deeper system, should I say, than a lot of other racing games out there. However, there is still a lot of tracks that are completely lacking a full 24-hour day-night cycle and any weather at all. Interlagos being a very much notorious one that doesn't feature weather, yet is very much known for some amazing wet weather races in real life. We also have the likes of Deep Forest, which was shown in a trailer in 2023 as having rain and wet weather, yet this has still never ever been implemented to GT7, yet it's been kind of known for over a year that it should be coming. Really, there is no excuse for not having this in 2024. Next up for me is BOP review. This is a pretty urgent one in my opinion. I feel like sport mode is certainly kind of, in a way, not that good anymore. It's, you know, a bit of a flash in the pan. It's great for competitive racing. The ranking system itself is actually quite good. It's pretty much always competitive. However, I would say the thing that makes sport mode very, very weak is the fact that typically you will only see a range of maybe 3 to 6 cars maximum per week, with a lot of cars then going on to the next week because they're so much stronger than a bunch of other vehicles in certain said categories. It's a massive shame that it's not more spread out and we don't see more, I guess, bulkier and diverse grids in sport mode. I honestly feel like the BOP system certainly needs a big shake up, making more cars much more competitive. These small little changes here and there will just make and break a car for another update before they go back and basically return it to the way it was. Next up for me is AI Online. So what is meant by this? Basically what I'm saying is a bunch of other racing games do feature the option, especially in custom races, to turn AI on just to bulk up a lobby. And I feel like this is a thing that GT7 really needs for the custom race mode. It's perhaps one of the best and most diverse things in the entire game. Yet the majority of these lobbies that we see will only feature maybe 1 to 5 players maximum, and that's your lot. Realistically, if you don't have a following, it's going to be very difficult for you to fill up that lobby if you're wanting to run very specific settings. This way, if we add AI, it could bulk up the grid. As players join in and out, they can just then take over that AI until the race restarts and they get to pick from their own vehicle. This is a thing that we've seen in plenty of racing games over time, and Gran Turismo 7 just feels like the perfect contender to have AI in its custom online race mode. Of course, just making it a much better game overall. Next up for me is going to be a weather fix for the online. Now, I run a racing league, I run custom races, I run lobbies, and a lot of the time if you turn the weather on, there's a high chance that you will just never ever see it. You'll be planning to run a wet race or a, you know, dry to wet race or a wet to dry race, and it just won't happen at all, and it's very frustrating. You'll have this perfect plan in your head and the weather just won't even bother showing up whatsoever. It will get grey, it will get cloudy, but no rain and no way to actually, you know, get this working. It doesn't really matter what settings you have set on, what kind of speed you have set on, what kind of time of day you have set on. There just seems to be a bug in the custom online races that seems to affect the weather. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't at all. It's a massive shame, and it does seem to have been made worse in around about the last 9 months or so. And, well, there's been no fix for it as of yet. So let's move on next to a feature that feels very much in the same vein as PSVR 2, more Sophie AI. The AI for Sophie, or Sophie AI, whatever you want to call it, is a fantastic feature to Gran Turismo. It really turns what is probably some of the worst AI in racing games that I've ever seen into actually sometimes a formidable foe, makes them much more lifelike. They'll actually defend, they won't just kind of sit on the racing line and that's it. However, I do feel like it needs implementing much more across the game. Instead of just holding this one on for the likes of Gran Turismo 8, etc., they should really start implementing it more over time in GT7. Of course, we saw the little test in March of 2023, then we got pretty much a full-blown implementation of it for November of 2023. Since then, there's been nothing. Surely they're still working on this system. Hopefully it's not just kind of a flash in the pan sort of thing, and we do get to see more Sophie in GT7. It really does spice up the entire single player section of the game. So with Sophie AI out of the way, let's move on to another feature that probably took a ton of time to implement and then doesn't really have seemed to have been touched since, and hopefully it will eventually get a few updates. Of course, I'm talking about PSVR 2 mode that came alongside the PSVR 2 upon launch. It was a fantastic thing. It probably took Polyphony a ton of hours to get working and implement it properly, especially to the scale that they did. However, one thing that is really lacking from it is the actual HUD itself and the customizability that we actually have for it. There is a ton of information lacking in VR, and it's a massive shame that we don't have the the option to play around and have it to the way that we want to do, other than a few very much set in stone settings. It's a massive shame, and hopefully this really does get picked up on and really worked on a bit more into the future. It'd be a shame just to implement it and leave it in the current state that it's in. Just add that customization to it, and I'm sure many more people will start using VR. And for my final point, for me this has to be a roadmap. Something that's always bothered me about Polyphony and the way they update this game is just the lack of any real feedback response, or lack of any real approaching, you know, the players to see how they're getting on with it, or being more open and honest about where they are with the game. The fact that the players are sort of kept in the dark, and then we wait for leaks or things to come out from official channels which then get deleted. It's a massive shame that we have to go about doing it that way to see where the game is and see if they're really actually carrying on with it. It really does feel like wasted potential, and the fact is, putting a roadmap out there and just keeping your player base updated would massively change the opinion from the player base on Polyphony. Even if it isn't a bunch of stuff we like for 1 month, if we can see that you're working on new tracks, new events, or bringing more features a little bit further down the line, you'll probably find that your player base will be a lot less on your back, with you guys being much more open and honest. This for me is a major deal. So that's going to be 10 things I really want to see in GT7 update 1.49 and beyond, and these are some of the things that I've really picked up on in this last month for playing since update 1.48. Anyway, you guys let me know what you want to see, and I will make a community version of this video taking the 10 best picks in terms of the comment section, Discord server and all that stuff, and put them all together for a video that should be releasing in the middle of next week. Now I know I have to say this pretty much every time I release one of these videos, but don't make it too specific. Things like specific cars, like if you want a BMW M5 from 1994, that's just a bit far-fetched. Of course I'm not going to put that in as a single point, and of course very specific tracks as well. You know, if you want maybe the original tracks, just say original tracks, or real world tracks, rally tracks, snow tracks, etc, etc. Try and keep it broad in terms of content like that, or else it's just basically a wasted point overall. Again, you can make it about anything you want to do, whether that be, you know, glitches, issues, you know, content you want to see in terms of more features, more game modes, etc, etc. Anyway, massive thank you for watching this video. I will see you tomorrow with another money method guide. Take care guys, peace.